You're listening to the Untitled Car Show in partnership with RightFootDown.com. Visit RightFootDown for your daily automotive fix. If you enjoyed today's program, please tell a friend. It's the best way to support this show. If you want to visit the archives, go to YouTube and search for Untitled Car Show. That'll bring you to the archived episodes. If you want to follow the show, just search for Untitled Car Show on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram. You can always send an email to the show at untitledcarshow@rightfootdown.com. We're so glad you decided to spend the next hour or so with us. Without further ado, let's get into today's program. Hello, and thanks for joining me this evening. I am, of course, Ike, your host, and I have a special guest from across the pond, Jess Shanahan. She is in charge of RacingMentor.com, and she has been on basically every type of, publication imaginable, from British Airways to Club, Land Rover, and Jaguars in Motion, and Your Cat magazine, which is my favorite one, listed in your little bona fides there. Jess, it is a pleasure to have you this evening. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. It's Racing Mentor. I'm in charge of.
I'm sitting here looking at my little notes, and I can't read Racing Mentor. I will go back and edit that one out so I don't sound like a complete idiot. So, Jess, thank you so much for joining me. Like I said, I kind of came across you. I forget exactly how. I saw you posting to someone or something like that. So I went, well, this is interesting. Now I have to kind of dive down deeper on this. And you're such a fascinating individual, and you host the Racing Mentor seems like something that's really needed in this, day and age. Even if you're not racing, I think a lot of this stuff can be put forth, like your little lessons that are available for free on the site are very useful for someone trying to get into, I think, any self-starting industry. So that's, I kind of just wanted, first and foremost get to, like, how did you decide that racing mentorship was going to be something that you wanted to do?
Well, last year I helped to run a Porsche team over here, and I had lots of people coming to me saying, can you help me find sponsorship? And I did it for a few drivers, and I've got, a handful of clients I've worked with for a long time doing sponsorship acquisition, but I couldn't help everyone. I couldn't, spend all day long hustling for all different races. So I thought I need to set up something where I can help more people. And that's kind of how Racing Mentor was born, off the back of kind of teaching people to get sponsorship for themselves, which means they're not paying a hefty chunk of money to, managers or anyone like that. And then kind of from there, the careers angle started as well. So I mentor across all of motorsport and not just drivers.
So let's take a step back from that then and go to kind of the beginning of your, life in this sort of career. So how did you kind of find yourself getting into automobiles, into cars, into racing? Did one lead into the other, or was it kind of born into?
Yeah, I wasn't the kind of person that was really into cars as a kid or anything like that. I just kind of, the more I drove, I had to do about a 50-mile round commute every day to get to a PR job I was working in, and realized that I loved driving. And I was already into Formula One. So it just kind of grew and grew just from my love of watching F1 and, going out on long drives and road trips. So it kind of developed from there as I started live tweeting about motorsport, especially about Formula One in the early days. And I set up a blog called Turn 8. Just started kind of using my journalistic skills and developing that side of my career basically through a blog and through Twitter. So it kind of all grew from just watching F1.
That's pretty remarkable that kind of just being a fan of F1 led you to where you are now. So how did, I guess, you went from being a fan of F1, you discovered, because that's kind of something I really discovered I liked cars and liked racing and stuff, basically once I was able to start driving vehicles. You know, a lot of the guests, you know, they're like, "Oh, I love them from a young age." I'm like, I get that, but that's not something I identify with. So, how did you take that and get to, you know, you obviously had some PR background, what you said, and work that onto, you know, getting on the track and working alongside these race teams and working. My understanding is that you were in charge of a race team as well.
I was last year, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So how did you get from, like, give us like the, you know, Cliff Notes version? Do they have Cliff Notes over there? Is that a thing? Or do you call them something else?
Yeah, but we only really know about it through American media.
Yeah. So I guess give us the brief version of the, from how you got from.
So
yeah.
I'm very driven.
Mm-hmm.
Pun the pun. And if I'm into something and if I have a hobby and a passion, I will turn it into my career. And I did it with fashion for a while. And that is still a large part of my career. But I started dabbling as an automotive journalist with this blog that I set up, and I started getting invited on press trips. And I went on one to Wales with Vauxhall.
Mm-hmm.
And met racing driver Rebecca Jackson, who is also a journalist. Started working with her, got more involved in motorsport, started working with Team Hard, which was amazing but brief. And it just kind of grew from there. I spent more time at racetracks, met more people, made a lot of friends that I then went into business with, set up the race team with some racers I was friends with, which was great. So much fun and so much experience doing that last year. And it just kind of grew from there. I'm good at making connections and kind of working out how to get my career to the point I want it to be. I'm very much about setting goals, chasing the dream.
Yeah, I mean, that's the one overriding kind of commonality. You know, it doesn't matter if you're trying to get into a race car, if you're trying to manage a team, if you're trying to become, you know, an engineer on charge of a product or, you know, whatever in life, as long as you kind of are able to really dedicate yourself to it and never really you can take no for an answer, but just never giving up. I guess that's like the one recipe for success really in life. So, you're making friends, you're making contacts, what was the team that you were in charge of last year? Exactly.
So we actually used my brand name, so we were Turn 8 Racing.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a Porsche 924 in the BRSCC Porsche Championship. So that was amazing fun. I met so many great people doing that. And the guys that raced in the team, they're still racing the same cars. I had to take a step back so I could work on other things, but they are winning everything and they're doing really well, and I'm really proud of them.
I mean, it's one of those things where you're like, I have to go away, but just keep kicking ass, and that's how that works. Yeah. You know, that's awesome.
Definitely.
So let's take another step back here. So how did you get into Formula One when you were younger?
Oh, that's the really simple thing of my boyfriend was into it, and he used to have friends over to watch it, and I thought, oh, I'll watch this. And yeah, now I am way more involved in motorsport than he ever will be or ever wants to be.
So then who's your current favorite Formula One driver?
Ooh, difficult. Ever since Mark Webber left, I haven't really had a favorite. There are lots of drivers I like. So I really like Nico Hülkenberg.
Mm-hmm.
Really, really, really like Sebastian Vettel, and I like seeing him do well too. But yeah, I'm just a Formula One fan. I don't really have a team per se or a driver that I follow religiously.
Mm-hmm. Now, the one thing, because I've kind of gotten into Formula One this year with the fantasy Formula One. I got a big former racing buddy who he's trying to get me into this, and I have discovered that there seems to be a love-hate. You either love him or hate him, Mr. Hamilton. Yeah. So are you not a fan of his?
It's difficult because you know, sometimes I think, oh, he's so annoying, he's so arrogant, and then other times I think, oh, I actually really like him. Like, he's such a character. And, from my point of view in what I do, talking about sponsorship and stuff for racers, he's the perfect example of someone who has a really fantastic brand.
Mm-hmm.
And I do like that about him. And I love the way he uses social media. So, yeah, I used to be not in the hate camp. I'm not a hater, but I was definitely not keen on him.
Mm-hmm.
But now I think, yeah, maybe I'm more on that love side.
Like I said, it's interesting to watch. And I think he makes it more entertaining because he does kind of play. I don't know if you're familiar with the wrestling parlance, but he plays the heel, the bad guy, kind of like
Yeah.
which is enjoyable. And unfortunately, I think he's going to win this year, and he's going to mess up my whole fantasy F1 rankings. Which that was another thing I didn't know was a thing. So I'm so curious about the whole racing mentor thing. You worked in PR, so let's kind of talk about that a little bit here. So you set up the racing mentor. You're that's kind of your baby, as I understand right now. That's kind of where most of your time and attention's focused.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So your background, really, that helps you out with that is you have a PR background and you have the racing background. This is kind of what went together. But then you also have this, you started your own publications. You're working with other publications. I mean,
Yeah.
So, because it's not often you get someone who has written about Formula One and has written for a cat magazine, which I have to find that cat article. Like that's what I need to see.
Yeah, the cat magazine was actually still car related.
Was it about? Now I have to know what was it about.
So, in 2013, one of my friends moved to Sweden,
Mm-hmm.
and he was saying how he couldn't afford to fly his cats over there, so I offered to drive them. So I basically drove two cats all the way from the UK to Sweden, in my Fiat Punto. It was fantastic. We did it in 19 hours because we didn't want to stop anywhere and like find a hotel that allows cats. So that's the thing. So we did it in one day, and it was amazing. And yeah, your cat magazine happily took that on as a story.
That sounds awesome. They must have been good cats because taking my cats and moving them one county over was an absolute torture for me. So I can't imagine 19 hours in the car.
Yeah, they were so chill. They didn't care at all.
No throw up, no vomit. Like that's remarkable to me.
No, nothing. They meowed for about the first 100 miles.
Yeah.
But when you're doing 900 miles, that's barely anything.
Yeah. So, you got the background. You're basically set up. You got the perfect background for getting people into this. So let's talk a little bit about, like, maybe some stuff. Let's talk about first of, I'm sorry, I'm having a little bit of, like, there's so many angles I can come at this with, and I'm just trying to think about which is the best one. So let's see. I think where we should start here is, like, if someone's interested in using your site, using Racing Mentor, like, where do you think is this something where someone could be coming from like a karting background and get a hold of you and start using your site, or is this something where maybe you've moved from karting into maybe like some sedan racing and you're moving up into some formula stuff? Like, is it good for every bracket, or is this something where maybe you should hit a certain point before you come to you?
So I'd say it's good for every bracket. When you go to my website, there's one of the first links that you'll probably see across the top is it says racers, and that's kind of my get started with Racing Mentor page. So there's tons of resources on there, free downloadables, blog posts, and then once someone's kind of got a hang of it, there's a few paid things too, and a little bit about the coaching that I offer as well. But it's mostly full of free resources, and you can find loads on the Slash blog on there as well. So it's kind of for everyone coming from any angle. Some people, if they've some people that I work with are coming from sim racing, haven't even hopped in the car yet.
Oh wow.
Whereas some people are just moving from karts to cars. And then I've got people doing, stuff like British GT over here. So it's definitely all levels.
Hmm. And is it from all over the world too? Is there something where someone in the States could use it, someone in the UK, someone, Saudi Arabia, Australia, wherever? Really, I mean, the lessons I would assume are pretty much the same worldwide because people don't change that much. But you're the expert, so you tell me.
Yeah, there is a little bit of different countries in terms of how the ladder is to go from your amateur motorsport up to professional. So that differs a bit, and I don't necessarily have as deep a knowledge of other countries as I do here in the UK.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of the business skills and the sales skills to pick up sponsors, that's the same the world over. And I do have the majority of my coaching clients are here in the UK, just because it's easier to get to each other and meet up and have those kind of coaching sessions. But I've got people reading the site from all over the place.
Mm-hmm. And maybe what's the biggest thing people don't understand about, taking on a sponsor? Because in terms of, business side, really taking on a sponsor, almost always there's a lot more catches than you would think that come along with that. So, like, what do you think is, like, maybe the biggest misunderstanding people have about getting a sponsor for, racing?
So a lot of people still think businesses will just give them money to support them.
Yep.
But why would a business owner give someone £10,000 or $10,000 to go racing when they could use that money to go racing themselves? So drivers have to be able to offer something to that business that will help increase sales, help increase brand awareness, or whatever that business's goals are. The driver has to help them do it. And another thing that a lot of drivers don't really get their heads around is that actually a sticker on the car isn't worth that much unless you are racing top level. So
Yeah.
there are a lot of club series over here that aren't on television,
Mm-hmm.
as I'm sure there are over there.
Yeah.
And drivers are still saying, oh, have a sticker on my car and pay me, however much money. But really, to a business, that's not that valuable. Whereas, the hospitality and the social media and the PR and stuff is the stuff that they will pay for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's almost like the Brave New World where you're not really so much being sponsored. You're now, I hate this term, but you're like a brand ambassador where like you take them on and you have to kind of live the lifestyle that they expect you to live and push it out on the social media. Because from what I understand, from what you're telling me, it's kind of the same thing, with any other media or any other endeavor, which is like, we'll give you the money, but basically you better be, if you're I don't know, what is it, Tesco's over there make sandwiches? If you're a Tesco's guy, we better not see you eating at McDonald's, like stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and push it. So social media plays a big role in what you teach everyone on the site as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Mm-hmm. So
yes, anything that can kind of get anyone's name out there, a business's name out there, be it social media or something in the physical world, events and so on.
Mm-hmm. So, like, I mean, it's got to be easier, like, to get the. I'm trying to think of how exactly what phrase. So, if you're sitting in a cart and you're, trying to move up into sedan racing, and you just need, that jump might be fairly expensive, but it's also probably the one where you have the most opportunity, I guess. I don't know. Like, is there a level of which from going to one bracket to another bracket where it's easier to kind of go out and get sponsors, or is it just like the same amount of work? It's just different type of work across the board.
I think a lot of people struggle with going from karts to cars just because a lot of businesses still see karting just as a hobby that people do, with their mates.
Mm-hmm.
They don't necessarily take it as seriously as they should, or as serious as it is. So a lot of drivers feel like they don't really have a lot to show when they move to cars. So that's probably the most difficult jump to make. I think when you're slowly moving up the ladder, when you're in, a single seater or a tin top or whatever, I think it's a lot easier to say, hey, look what I did in this car. I want to go to a slightly faster one or a slightly cooler one, or, there's better coverage. This is on telly. It supports this amazing series, etc. There's so much more you can do there. Whereas if you're going from a great karting series to a low end car series, although sometimes karting costs a lot more than cars anyway, but
Yeah.
when you're making that switch, it can kind of be quite difficult and can often be hard to bring sponsors along with you as well.
Mm. Is there a difference, because this one just popped into my head? Is there a difference between trying to get a sponsorship from like a non-profit, like we have like Wounded Warriors Foundation over here, and getting like from a typical for-profit business? Is one easier than the other, or is it the same rules across the board?
In terms of how you approach them, it would be kind of the same, but obviously what you offer and what you ask from those two different categories are very different. I know a lot of people who work with non-profits, they basically do little bits and pieces for free
Mm-hmm.
because, that's their way of supporting a charity, for example.
Yeah.
So yeah, typically if someone's going to go down the non-profit route, it's normally because they really want to support a cause, at least over here and in my experience. Whereas it's the businesses with the money. Obviously, the non-profits have to spend everything they get on, doing the good that they do in this world.
Yeah. So I guess that's enough free advice for the people listening. If you want more, you really should go check out racingmentor.com and look at the site. You got the consultations, you got the free stuff, and reading through free stuff, and definitely follow you on Twitter, because there's a lot of great blogs and everything that come up, and it really is, if you're a younger person listening to this and you're thinking, I want to get into any sort of business or YouTube or basically anything, a lot of these same lessons transfer over, and you do phenomenal work and phenomenal writing about all this stuff, and it's always fun to read. And then if you're thinking about getting into racing, look at the consultations and all that stuff, which that's got to be fun. I mean, what is that like? I'm curious, because I get to Skype different people every week and talk to some very interesting folk, but yours is very condensed, and this is what we're going to be doing, and this is what we're going to be talking about, and trying to like advance their career to the next level. Like, that's got to be such a rewarding thing to do.
Yeah, it's so much fun as well, because not only do I get to talk to all these amazing racing drivers and people who are looking for motorsport careers, but I get to go along to the races and stuff too. So that makes me very happy, obviously. But it's good. Every session is completely different because it's all tailored to the driver, where they're at, who they're working with, the team, families, etc. So recently I had a coaching session with a driver who is moving from karts to a relatively high up junior series.
Mm-hmm.
And I sat down with him and his parents for a whole day. We did kind of half a day of sponsorship coaching, to kind of help them get the money they need to do everything they want to do next year. And then we had half a day of media training, where I kind of did a mock interview with him, and we recorded it all, gave feedback, and then we recorded it again a couple of times just to see where he could improve. So yeah, it varies every time. So other drivers might just sit and question me for an hour to a day, depending on how long we've got.
Mm-hmm.
And today I was helping out. I was on mechanic duty, with a group of students who run 3 cars in the mini challenge. And while there was a lull, I had one of the students, who is also a racing driver, come over with his parents to kind of chat to me about sponsorship, and they pulled this proposal out of their bag. They're like, is there any chance you can have a look? So I gave them a little bit of kind of free advice there and then, because I can't say no. And then some coaching sessions are just on Skype for an hour, and it has to be really structured, really, really kind of there's no time for the banter like there is with the day long sessions. But it's all good, and it's so nice to get a message from a driver saying, "Hey, I got some sponsorship," and this whole list of figures comes along, and I'm like, yes, it makes me so happy to help these people get on track and stay on track.
Mm-hmm. Well, on that note, what do you think is the reason? Like, did you always want to do like mentorship? Like, because this is like, it is a very selfless thing. I mean, obviously, you're making a little bit of money off of it, but this is one of those things where you could keep all this information to yourself and, make it easier for you to go out and maybe do your racing career, or do whatever you want to do with the knowledge, really. But this is, you're giving to that next generation, obviously it's rewarding, but what do you think it is that kind of made you want to do this in the first place?
I think it was just from hearing so many racing drivers saying that they were, struggling with this kind of thing. And I thought, I can really help these people. And motorsport is a family,
mm-hmm.
and I like that. I like to be able to see people on Facebook or Twitter or wherever I am and see that someone's doing well and know that I had a very, very small part or a very large part to play in that.
Yeah.
I also found that, I'd done my thing in my career and achieved a certain level of success, and I started thinking, I want to help people. And I volunteered a bit, and I'm a STEM ambassador, and I'm going into schools a lot, but this is a way that I can have a career surrounded by great people, race cars, etc., and also help people as well.
Mm-hmm. And you touched on something there, and I'm curious about how you feel about this. I have not met a rude person, an unkind person, like even someone who's just a little mean to me doing any of like in the automotive world. Obviously being on the internet, there's trolls and stuff like that, but I really haven't day to day run into anyone who has had a mean thing to say to me. I could ask them about it, down to like the guy at the, local car meet, all the way up to, walking around racetracks, talking with folks. No one's really brushed you off or, brushed me off or done anything like that. And I do find, in my past life, that wasn't quite the same way. And I'm curious, have you found race car drivers to be as, or racing drivers, people in the automotive world, to be, kinder than people in other parts of other communities, I guess?
That's difficult. I mean, obviously there are the trolls, like you say,
mm-hmm.
and yeah, I don't have any time for them. I don't know. I definitely, the majority of people are nicer than most people out there in the world, I think, and everyone kind of clubs together to help everyone. But I have found the odd person who, will kind of ignore me or brush me off or won't speak to me. And apparently I've got quite a reputation for being very outspoken. I don't know how I got this reputation. Someone told me the other day like it was a bad thing. So I guess there are people out there, and I think that kind of bitchiness is always behind closed doors, and everyone, puts on a smiley, happy face when they're talking to you. But I think one thing I have found that I have to fight against is, because I'm a woman in motorsport, if I'm not in team gear, I get ignored. People don't expect me to be the person who's into cars. And I had a thing at a racetrack this year where, until this gentleman learned that I do what I do, he completely ignored me. But as soon as I got talking to his wife and he overheard what I did, he was like my best friend. I was like, oh, this is weird. This is the first time I've ever, experienced something that obvious about, not, oh, she must not be interested in racing. Oh, she is interested in racing. Let's be friends, kind of thing.
Yeah, that's, having interviewed, like, I don't know, half a dozen women, a little more than that probably now, like, in this field. I don't like that question of like, well, how is it being a woman in this field? Because it implies that there's like a difference or another, when really all it is some men are complete idiots and have no idea that like the, better gender could be into this. I say better because my wife makes me, but no, it's the same thing. I've been to tracks, and it's a little different, I guess, coming from your perspective over there with, dealing with let me apologize for all men because we're just idiots in the first place. But I really do hope, and I'm curious about that, is what's the proportion of people you're mentoring, male or female? Have you seen a increase in, girls applying and trying to get sponsorships in, the last little bit? Because I feel like every little girl I talk to, I have a little girl, so that sounds weird if I don't preface it with that. They're into cars, they're into racing, they're into kind of like the more outlandish stuff, and all the like boys, especially around driving age, seem to be more interested in video games and living in their parents' basement. Like that's just my little field of vision from it, but it does seem, and I do think maybe in the next 10 years, this could be something where at least it's starting to become female dominated. So.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, I know tons of female racers, but the majority of my clients tend to be men or like young men. But on the other side of things, on the career side of things, journalists, engineers, anyone that wants to work in PR, social media, the majority of the people I work with are women. I think that comes from, I'm part of Dare to Be Different, which was set up by Susie Wolf, which basically promotes and champions women in motorsport. And I get a lot of my careers clients from that pool of people. So a lot of the people who are on my motorsport journalism course came through Dare to Be Different. So they are women. So yeah, I agree with you completely. Next 10 years, we're going to see all those excited young girls, hopping in cars, going racing, and I think the fields are gonna even out a bit more in terms of gender split.
Which I think is, I can't wait, to be perfectly honest, because just to like break that little last little bit of stigma in the automotive world, it would just be so nice, because it seems like a lot of other stuff's been broken, but that seems to be the last one. Like, girls can't be into cars. What are you, crazy? Like well, I don't know how it is in the United Kingdom, but most of the car buying here in the States, the majority of it's done by women, and that's
it's the same here.
Yeah, and it's unfortunately there's a lot of SUVs in there, which I don't quite agree with, but that's because men make stupid decisions. That's what we do, especially young men, like 20 years old. Just every man who's like less than 20 is like basically an idiot with all that testosterone up in there. So that's enough man bashing from my behalf. Hi, all my listeners. I know the vast majority of you are men. So let's kind of go off into a little different tangent here. Speaking of car buying, let's go into what cars you've owned. So, what was the car you learned to drive in?
A Renault Clio. It's really boring.
Yeah, it is boring over there, but it would get mobbed over here, which I think is awesome. So it's a little...
I think the way we learn to drive is very different to how you guys learn to drive. So I didn't have my own car until halfway through. I started learning to drive, and it took me absolutely ages. I was terrible. I took 5 tests. I kept failing, which is awful considering I am an automotive journalist now. So yeah, a Renault Clio, which I wasn't that enthralled by it at the time.
It is interesting to me though, because the people who get most into motorsports, I think, start off with the world's worst cars for whatever reason. I don't think you guys definitely didn't get this over here. I had a Saturn, which is like an awful, awful little car made out of plastic, and love cars now. And I think part of it is you learn what the limits of a car are driving something like that, as opposed to being given my first car was a Porsche 911. You're never going to find the limits of a 911 on the road until you're dead. Yeah. So Renault Clio, if my recollection is right, that's a 4-door hatchback, right? Little thing?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you learned in the Clio, you got out, and I know it's a little different over there. It's hard for, the young folk to get their own car immediately. So what was the car you were driving around after the Clio?
Clio is obviously an instructor's car because we have businesses that teach us to drive. And do you guys do it in school? It depends on where you're at. Some schools don't have enough people to even do that, but there's driving schools, and then there's dedicated driving schools, and then there's some schools to have
driver's ed built into the curriculum.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I that's all comes from watching American television.
Mm-hmm.
So my first car that I owned was a 1994 Fiat Punto
Yeah.
called Roxy.
I'm going to go out on a limb. I'm going to guess red. I don't know why. I think all Puntos are red in my head.
No, it was white.
Oh. I'm going to have to, change that in my head. Not a fast little thing. So again, I'm going to take a guess here. My Fiat knowledge is fairly good. But I'm going to guess 3 cylinders, 1 liter, around that.
4 cylinders and 1.4.
Okay.
I had the most powerful car at college. Everyone was really jealous, even though it was only 1.4.
Well, that's good. So, again, little small European thing. I'm very jealous of your car history, whether you know it or not. I love small cars. So, the Punto, that's another fun little thing. And then what inevitably happened to the Punto? Because there's always some sort of sad story when the first car goes away.
Yeah, it was savagely murdered by someone who crashed into my driver's side door as I was turning right. So I was turning right, and the car behind me didn't realize, drove straight into the side of me. Completely their fault, thankfully, even though I was a terrible driver. But yeah, I was really sad.
Mm-hmm.
So injured. So
Yeah, that's a 1-2 hit.
About the poor car.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're obviously hurting. You lost your Punto. You lost Roxy. So what did you get into after that?
This seems like the weirdest jump considering the cars I had after it and before it, but I had a Daewoo Lanos Saloon, which was, just I don't think I've ever seen another Daewoo Lanos Saloon. Most of them are hatchbacks, but you don't really see them that much anymore, at least over here. And that was a 1.6, and that was still when I was at college. And again, I felt so cool being like the noisiest, kind of loudest car. And it was my first foray into modifying cars as well. And I cut a hole out of the parcel shelf, which couldn't be removed. It was just metal.
Yeah.
Cut 2 holes out to put a huge speaker system in, complete with a household sub and fancy stereo.
Yeah.
And if you had the car on without the engine running, it would drain the battery immediately.
Always fun.
Yeah.
I'm sure when it was on full blast, because I'm sure you did that, like everything in the car vibrated, like every nut and bolt.
Yeah, took out my wing mirrors. Up full blast. They were vibrating so much.
Yep, that's about what I expect, because we got some people driving around, cars of a similar year with the same thing, and I've driven in one of those, and it's like you can feel your teeth rattle, not because the speakers, because everything else in the car is rattling as well. So, what?
I love that sound system.
It sounds like it's pretty good. I mean, house subwoofer, as long as it works, I guess. I'm going to guess that also meant an unfortunate demise, because I think that's what has to happen to those cars.
It actually didn't. I sold it to my brother when I bought a different car.
Oh.
So it was still on the road for a while. I don't know what ultimately happened to it. But it was on the road for a while.
What happened to the Daewoo? We don't talk about the Daewoo at family gatherings. So what did you decided? I need something with a even better sound system. So what did you get into after that?
No, I don't know what happened. Basically, I thought, hey, I've just got a job. I've just come out of college. I'm earning some money.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to buy myself a 1-year-old car.
Yeah.
And I test drove a few things, but I ultimately ended up with a 2006 Grande Fiat Punto. So I went back to Fiat.
But it's a Grande now, so.
Yeah, so bigger, newer, slightly shinier. I love that car, and I had it 10 years.
What did that one's name end up being?
That was Ultra.
Oh, like the...
named after, that's a Mighty Boosh reference.
Not familiar with that. I was thinking of the, what was it, the Kraken machine of the German code. Was it?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Oh, what was? I'm trying to remember now. It's because now I'm having a brain fart about what the German code was called. That little machine they had. That's going to drive me nuts. I'll look it up later. So you had Ultra. So had that for 10 years. Obviously, great little car. Did you do anything to it? Did you throw a big speaker system into it?
I actually didn't, and the speaker system it came with was actually pretty good. I was actually having this conversation with someone today, one of the students from the college I was working with. He's got a Grande Punto, and I was saying the sound system's great, and he's like, yes. So yeah, that's the car that I owned for the longest, and that's the one that I drove the cats to Sweden in.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it did me really well, but it didn't have wing mirror shaking. Great sound system, unfortunately, and I didn't actually do anything to that car, just stock and pristine.
It's not like a code in my head, like driving the cats to Sweden, like sounds like a code for something, and as well as like
for a euphemism of some kind.
Yeah, like I drove the cats to Sweden. You did in the Fiat Punto. Oh, like keep your personal business to yourself there. So. Had that for 10 years. Did you give it away willingly, or did it get taken from you again?
No, I gave it away willingly, but I did cry. That was coming up on 3 years ago, but I bought my dream car, so I had to get rid of it. I bought an Abarth 500, so the Fiat 500 Abarth. I think you guys have over there.
Yes.
So I stuck with Fiat like the whole time, which is good because now they're starting to recognise that and they're giving me lots of nice cars. So I'm fine with it.
Oh, is that all it takes? I would have done that years ago then.
Yeah. So yeah, I bought the car that I'd been kind of coveting for ages, and now I don't look back. I still, when I have conversations like this and I talk about my previous cars, because I name them all, which is silly, I get really attached. But actually, yeah, I've just driven back from a racetrack in, my little hot hatch, so I'm quite happy.
It came down to me. I almost bought either a Fiat 500 Abarth or the Ford Fiesta, and it just came down to the Fiesta has 2 more doors, and that's basically why I got it. And I think that's the perfect car if you live in a congested area, because I live just outside of D.C., between D.C. and Baltimore, which are very old American cities, which means like a new English city, I think is how that works. But very small streets, and you would probably laugh over here because people are driving down streets meant for horses and their Ford Escalades, or not Escalade, Cadillac Escalade.
Yeah.
And I'm in my little Fiat cutting through traffic.
So I do kind of have a little bit of an idea of what it's like.
Yeah. Probably just laughing at us like, why are you driving around these monstrosities? Like, what's wrong with you? Yeah, that's not all American drivers. Let me just preface it with that. That's because I'm from the Midwest and we still make fun of the folk out here. So I love the Abarth. I think that is definitely a car person's car. So what is that one's name? Now I have to know.
That's Harvey.
Harvey? Ooh.
Harvey the Abarth.
Why Harvey?
Oh, it's such a geeky, convoluted story, but I will tell you. So, the badge of an Abarth is a scorpion.
Yeah.
If anyone listening has seen Farscape, there is a character in that called Scorpius. Big Farscape fan, as is my other half. So we were like, oh, what can we call this car? It has to be something like Scorpion, Scorpius. And there's, through some narrative and plot line, that character also gets called Harvey. So it kind of came from there.
It makes sense. I've seen Farscape. I've never seen that many episodes to quite get the reference, but I can appreciate all. I have a similar the series Firefly. So I've had a Kaylee as one of my cars, a Amira. I've had a Serenity, and then I'm trying to think. I had another one named, and I can't remember what it is now. But basically, all named after that series. So I appreciate the nerd references. So what's what's better than life than a sci-fi movie and driving some fast cars? I mean, that's just
Exactly.
yeah. So speaking of television series, then, so what I like to do you get this series over there? Do you have Inside the Actors Studio? Do you get that shown over there by any chance?
No, I've heard of it again through just being around American media. I've heard of it, but I've never seen it, and I wouldn't know where to get it over here.
So, in that series, they ask a series of questions just to kind of probe who these people are as actors. So I figure since this is the podcast of record, I'll ask a similar set of questions. This is something where it's kind of like answers in the moment, because as car enthusiasts, racing enthusiasts, our answers can change day to day, hour by hour. Yep. So just kind of like first one that comes into your head. So what is your favorite car?
Ford Mustang.
I was not expecting that. May I ask why?
I love muscle cars. I've actually never driven one, weirdly, but just everything from the earliest examples to even the modern ones, they're just so beautiful, just gorgeous shapes, and then V8.
Yeah. I've owned 2 muscle cars because I'm an American, and that's you're required to. They go, you can have a gun or you can have the muscle car. I'm like, I'll take the muscle car. That's they give it to you at your birth certificate. You just check off a box. So then, what is your least favorite car?
Wow, that's such a hard question.
Well, let's put this could be something that you have a specific hatred against, or something when you see it driving on the road, you're just like, I don't know why anyone would ever drive that, or it could be a car that has just let you down.
So I'm not one to judge people's cars or to hate a car, because I think every car has its own merits, even if I don't understand it. But what I really don't like is people who have, you'll probably understand this, but people who have huge cars unnecessarily. So there's something over here called the Chelsea Tractor, which is basically posh Land Rover or whatever. But these cars have never seen mud. Go take that car off road, please. I feel like anyone who has a big car like that, who does just drive it into London and then home to their beautiful house or whatever, they're almost wasting the car. It needs to get muddy. It needs to kind of be a little bit sideways. It needs to be used properly.
I think the worst example of that over here is the people in the Mercedes G-Wagons. That's the worst. Because that's the most capable off-road vehicle probably made by any manufacturer at the moment, and they've never seen a bit of mud. I'm going to put it down as a G-Wagon. This will come up in a bit.
I'm okay with that.
All right. So you're going to modify your car. You're going to do something to it. What is your favorite mod? This could be like stance. The guys. You probably don't have this over here. Are you familiar with the term bro-dozer?
No.
So it's when you picture America and you picture a pickup truck and the guy who takes it and lifts it and it puts the giant springs on it, and then the big wheels, and then the big flag off the top, and then probably a shotgun rack. That's a bro-dozer. So
nice.
Yeah,
we don't have that.
Yeah,
we do have cars like that, but never heard that term. But I love it.
So, which modification trend, along those lines of messing with your car, stance, big lifted truck, bro-dozer, as it were, stereo system upgrades, anything any modification trend? What is your favorite version of that?
So I'm a little bit of a purist. So I'm keeping my R-Bar stock, but I keep thinking about getting an older hot hatch that I can make the girl raceriest car possible. So I want stuff like a cold air intake that's all about noise rather than performance. I want my car to go whoosh really loudly and annoy everyone.
Yeah.
A sound system has to be up there as well, though. I do like a good car disco.
Yeah, I like that phrasing, car disco.
Yeah.
That's going
Car
to be.
disco and car karaoke. That's my jam.
So then, what is your least favorite modification trend? What is the one where, because we're not about hate on this show, obviously, but it's one of those things where you see it and you just don't understand why people do that to their car.
So I get it from an aesthetic point of view, but all the cars that are ridiculously stanced with unrealistic camber stresses me out. And I see people that are riding their tyres really close to the rim of their wheel arch. And I think, if you turn left, something's going to break. Can this car only go in a straight line? No, I mean, although I want pointless, noisy mods on my cars, I look at cars with completely impractical modifications and think, yes, this looks beautiful, but if you took that on track, that's not going to work. If I'm going to modify a car, I want it to be closer to a race car than a pretty thing that belongs in a picture or whatever. Not that I'm hating on people who do this, because I do love looking at these cars, but yeah, I want to get closer to race car status rather than stanced car status.
Yeah, I completely understand. That's probably the number one. Like, I just don't get that trend. And
yeah.
So what car? You're rolling up to a red light. What's the car you least want to be stuck behind? What is that car you dread being up ahead of you at that red light?
Pretty much every car, because I'm so quick off the line. Just if there's a car in front of me, I'm upset, because I think I'm actually a racer at heart. Anything, so like a Citroen C1 Picasso or any of the Citroen Picassos, they just all seem to be slow and driven by people who don't understand how to do the speed limit.
Yeah, understood. Yeah, that's Scott Speed, pretty much the same answer. Like that, just anything. Like no one knows how to get off the line.
No, they don't.
What is the automotive sound or noise you love? So typical answers like V8s and stuff like that.
Yeah, so V8 is my stock answer, but I really love that point when you're at a racetrack and you're working with cars, and when they're first started up during the day. So the first time that you hear your race car's engine on race day, I love that. I love that burble of sound, and it makes me excited to go racing and to go watch racing.
Okay, what is the automotive sound or noise you hate? This one's a little harder. Let me give you a second to think about this. A lot of answers are like brakes, squeal,
I think it's the crunching of gears. If someone doesn't get a gear in properly, and actually my car does this all the time, it doesn't go into reverse properly, and it makes this awful crunch sound. But particularly when people are lifting off the clutch too early and they get a huge crunch, it makes me wince. Like, what are you doing? Your poor gearbox.
So, I was going to say, a Fiat with a gearbox that doesn't work 100% right, that's shocking to me.
I know. Mason, I must be the only one.
Must be. They should take it back and investigate. It never would happen elsewhere. Yeah. So, I'm going to give you 2 cars here, and you got to pick between the 2, and you're not allowed to modify them other than how I've modified them. So, the first car is a Ford Mustang. We'll go, what's your favorite year of the Mustang?
That's a hard question in itself. I do love kind of like the mid 2000s American ones. We didn't have them here then, but the really big, chunky, modern looking ones, probably like all muscle car purists probably hate me now, but I do like a chunky modern muscle car.
All right, we'll go with that version of the Mustang, but it's been stanced to within an inch of its life. Or you get a Mercedes G-Wagon with a upgraded sound system, and it's been all girl racered out.
Oh, it would have to be the G-Wagon. But I get it muddy. First thing I do, muddy G-Wagon disco.
Now, would the answer change if I said you're never allowed to go off-road with the G-Wagon?
No.
All right, then. All right, and then I have 2 final questions for you that I think are the most important questions that any podcast, maybe even any program, can ask of anyone ever on the history of the planet. So I put these into prepared questions, and I hope you're ready for these. Number one is, what's the hardest food to eat while driving?
I'm the wrong person to ask because I am two hands on the steering wheel at all times, but probably McDonald's breakfast. Just because every time I used to go to racetracks early, I'd stop at a McDonald's kind of on my way, and I would try and eat, like a breakfast wrap or whatever as I was going along. And every time, and I literally mean 100% of the time, I would get ketchup or whatever on my clothes. So I've walked around the racetracks covered in McDonald's ketchup, so probably that.
Yeah, they should give a bib, I think, at all fast food restaurants. I'm starting to pick this up, like a nice little catch bib or something like that.
Yeah, that'd be perfect.
Mm-hmm. I'm not putting that in the top 10 of answers. We've had some more creative ones, but that's a good personal experience one, because I don't think I've ever had. I don't think I've ever eaten McDonald's in a car and not made a mess of something. So I'm going to give you. I'll give you a passing grade on that one.
Thank you.
Because typically what this turns into is stupid stuff I've done in the car, which is like matzo ball soup. Like, yeah, I've tried that in the car. Just because, why not? Now, here's one. This was brought up a while ago, and I've added it to the questions. Not one I have a ton of personal experience with, but what's the hardest makeup to apply while driving a car?
Wow. I can't say I have any experience with that. It's got to be mascara or something where you poke your own eye out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the typical answer here is the eyeliner, like whatever that, like, you take that pencil and you put it up against your eye. Like, every time I see anyone doing that in a car, I'm like, the fact that there's not news reports every day of people just losing eyeballs, like, doing this is remarkable to me. Yeah.
So the problem with the R-Bath is the suspension is so stiff on it. It's, a little pretend race car that I think if I even tried to look in the mirror, I'd probably lose an eye.
Yeah. I'm right there with you. I drove that car. That is not especially because it's almost like driving a motorcycle. You have to be paying full time and attention to the road and all the people around you, because they won't see you and a pothole can swallow you whole. So
yeah, exactly.
I'm curious then, since when you took the cats to Sweden, what did you eat along the way?
Mostly cake. I think we stopped for food, and we stopped in Germany for some food at a service station. We let the cats out on lead.
Yeah.
And one almost escaped into the forest. So I think we were too busy worrying about the cats really to eat. But when we got to Sweden, our friend made us Swedish food, which was full of cream and sausage and everything. And I think it was like the best thing I'd ever had. But because there were two of us driving, I could kind of sit and eat unimpaired. Okay,
I'm wondering if this is a cultural difference. When you say cake, I'm picturing like a chocolate cake. Like,
no, it was like, do you guys have Bakewell tarts?
I like a Bakewell tart? Tort?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tarts. So they're like little pastry cases filled with kind of like an almond paste, then topped with icing.
We have something similar. Yeah. Ours is just like generic cream flavored like chemicals and like chocolate cake around it. Yeah. Basically everything here just tastes like chemicals at a certain point. So
every time I visit, I am shocked and horrified.
Well, now I have to ask, have you ever visited Chicago?
Yes, I have.
Okay. I'm originally from there. I will defend Chicago's food against any country on the planet. Just don't eat the garbage food on your way to Chicago. And don't eat the chemical cheese, because that's from Wisconsin and they don't count.
I've actually, two things that I still haven't had are proper pizza and proper Chicago hot dogs. Despite my friend who lived there at the time saying, right, these are the things you need to eat. I was so jet lagged. That was the first stop on a big road trip. Yeah, that's where we flew into.
Well, I can give you a list. So when next time you're in the States, I will give you a list of what you need to get in Chicago and where you can go and get it. So, yeah, just stay away from the East Coast. There's not any good food on this coast, as far as I found. So, just the Midwest. That's where it's best. So, Jess, I want to thank you so much for joining me this evening. Where can people find you? Like, where's your, obviously racingmentor.com. Where can they follow you on Twitter, on all the social media? Where can they find your articles and everything like that?
So on Twitter and Instagram, I am simply @racingmentor, or if you want a slightly more personal view of my racing world, I'm @jetlabomb, which is JETLBOMB. That's my personal account. And then on Facebook, you can find me just by searching Racing Mentor or facebook.com/Racing Mentor. I'm very easy to find on the internet.
Excellent. I want to thank you so much for joining me this evening. It's been an absolute blast talking to you. I'm going to follow you. I already follow you, but I'm like, it's such great. I love the blogs. I love the little Racing Mentor blogs, I got to say. And
I'm glad.
I'm curious, can we find, I know you're a contributor to BBC, was it Northern Radio, something like that?
Yeah, my local radio, I'm their motoring expert. On my personal website, which is jessshanahan.com, there are a couple of clips on there of me waffling on about cars and taking calls from all of the very, very interesting people who live in the Norfolk countryside. So yeah, you can find a few clips on there as well as some of my other stuff, and all of my other journalism stuff is on there as well. But I don't think you guys can actually get the radio station over there.
Oh, dang it. I was going to say, because if you're listening in the UK, go listen to that after you listen to this podcast. And I'm going to try and find a way to listen to all of those because I'm intrigued to hear all of those as well. I love the audio format. So, Jess, thank you again so much for joining me. I'm going to say goodbye to you off air. Everyone who's listening right now, I'll be right back after this quick break.
Hey there, Danny with Right Foot Down. I messed up this ad read so many times because I really want to tell you about Track Monkey Apparel. They make great quality enthusiast shirts along with hats, stickers, watches, patches, you name it. A couple of my personal favorites are their Life is Better at the Track tee and their One Track Mind tee. You should really check them out and see for yourself. Their products are great for you or the gearhead in your life. Visit trackmonkeyapparel.com.
Thank you for joining us this evening. Make sure that if you like what you hear, you tell a friend, a loved one, a coworker, someone who you think may be interested in listening to the program. If you have some time, please visit Track Monkey Apparel. Let them know that we sent you that way. Make sure you visit Right Foot Down and read all the latest blogs and reviews going on over there. A lot of good stuff coming out over there, so make sure you check it out. You can follow the show and myself on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all the sites at Untitled Car Show. You can follow our West Coast correspondent, Ryan West, at RyanNader122 on Twitter. And if you need more info or you got some sort of idea for the show, send an email, untitledcarshow@rightfootdown.com. So make sure you leave a review for us on whatever platform you listen to this on. It really helps out a lot. And seriously, thanks for listening. So have a good night. Have a good evening. Wherever you are, whatever time it is there. Thank you so much for listening. Please be safe out there.